Hey everyone, and welcome back. Ready to dig into another deep dive?
Always. What are we unearthing this time?
Well, today we're going deep, literally, into the world of Brazilian geology. We got a request to dig into this report, Conhecimento Geológico 50 anos. Catchy title, right?
Definitely grabs your attention. It's all about the state of geological knowledge in Brazil. Super relevant to, well, everything from mining to water resources to understanding natural hazards.
Exactly. And get this, the report basically says that Brazil is sitting on a potential gold mine, geologically speaking. I mean, we already know Brazil is a resource-rich country, but this report suggests there's a whole lot more waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it's like they've only explored the tip of the iceberg. A lot of Brazil, especially the Amazon rainforest, is still a big, mysterious blank spot on the geological map.
Wow, so a land of unexplored potential. But we can't just go in blind, right? We need those geological maps, those surveys, to tell us what's actually down there. And that's where this whole geoscience gap thing comes in, right?
Right. It's like trying to find your way around a new city without a GPS or even a decent map. These surveys are like the fundamental building blocks for understanding a country's geology, which is crucial for resource exploration, infrastructure, you name it.
Okay, so no GPS, no map. Sounds like we're lost. But seriously, how far behind is Brazil when it comes to these geological surveys?
Well, they've made progress, but they're still lagging behind other resource-rich countries like Canada and Australia in terms of investment.
Okay, so they're playing catch-up. But what does this geoscience gap actually mean for, everyday Brazilians? Like, why should the average person care about this?
Well, think about it this way. This isn't just about rocks and minerals, it's about the future. Brazil might be missing out on economic opportunities, jobs, even discovering resources that could benefit everyone. And on top of that, it can have serious consequences when it comes to managing things like water resources or even preparing for natural disasters.
It's interesting you mentioned that because the report talks about how this lack of consistent investment in geoscience has kind of led to this boom and bust cycle in Brazil's mineral exploration. Like, they'll have these exciting discoveries. The Fazenda Brasileiro gold mine in the 80s is a perfect example, but then it seems like those successes aren't always followed up with sustained effort. Like, they get a taste of the treasure and then
they put the metal detector away.
Yeah.
The Fazenda Brasileiro find was huge. They used these new geophysical techniques and boom, this massive gold deposit.
So they showed what's possible with a bit of innovation.
Right, but the report argues that kind of innovative approach needs to be applied across the board, not just in isolated cases.
So it's not just about playing catch-up, it's about embracing cutting-edge geoscience to really unlock Brazil's full potential, and doing it in a way that benefits everyone, not just a few mining companies.
Absolutely, and that's where things get really interesting because the report lays out a potential roadmap for how Brazil could become a global leader, not just in finding valuable resources, but in doing so sustainably.
Okay, I'm definitely sensing a but coming. It's not going to be easy, is it?
Well, let's just say the report doesn't sugarcoat the challenges, but it also offers some concrete solutions. It's not going to be a walk in the park, that's for sure. But the report does lay out some concrete steps Brazil could take. And one of the biggies, they really need to invest in more detailed geological mapping.
Okay, so like upgrading from those old school hand-drawn maps to something a little more high-tech.
Exactly. Think less paper map, more Google Earth. But for rocks, they need to up their resolution, get granular.
Okay, so zoom in a bit, get into the nitty-gritty of those rock formations.
Precisely. And they need the right people and equipment to do it, which of course takes funding. But the report actually lays out some budget scenarios. They get really specific about it.
Oh, wow, they actually put a price tag on it.
They did. And they analyzed past investment trends, which, spoiler alert, have been pretty inconsistent. Basically saying, look, if you want different results, you got to do things differently.
No more boom and bust, they're saying. It's about consistent, strategic investment.
Exactly. And it's not just about playing catch up with other countries either. The report also highlights the need to explore what they call new frontiers.
New frontiers, that sounds exciting. What do they mean by that?
Well, think really deep underground, those super remote areas that are tough to access, maybe even the seabed. Imagine discovering mineral resources off the coast of Brazil.
Underwater mining, like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It's closer to reality than you might think. And to do that, to explore those new frontiers, you need cutting-edge tools and tech. The report talks about things like 3D geological modeling,
Okay, so trading in the old compass and pickaxe for some serious tech upgrades.
Exactly. But it's not just about doing one thing, right? It's about a multi-pronged approach. Mapping, geophysical surveys, geochemical analysis, targeted research, it all works together.
It's like a recipe for success, combining all the right ingredients to really get a complete picture.
Exactly. And a key part of that recipe, capacity building. We're talking training programs for geologists, research partnerships, fostering a thriving geoscience community in Brazil.
So, nurturing those minds that are going to be leading the way.
Exactly. They even emphasize improving geoscience education, starting all the way back in primary school.
Get them while they're young, right?
Right.
Build that passion for geology early on. Makes sense. But all of this, the mapping, the technology, the education, it's all for nothing if the information stays locked away, right?
You hit the nail on the head. The report really hammers home the importance of open data sharing.
So it's about democratizing this knowledge, making sure everyone has access to it, not just government agencies or big companies.
Yes. Make it accessible to researchers, local communities, even the public.
That's really interesting because if people understand the geology of where they live, they can make more informed decisions about how to use and protect those resources.
Exactly. And a huge part of that is understand something we hear a lot about these days. Critical minerals.
The stuff that powers our smartphones, electric cars, all that.
Exactly. And Brazil has the potential to be a major player in the critical minerals game. Not just a supplier, but a leader in sustainable sourcing and production.
So they could be calling the shots instead of being dependent on other countries.
Right, and they use phosphate as a really interesting example.
Phosphate. Okay, I'll admit, that doesn't sound quite as glamorous as, say, lithium or cobalt.
Maybe not, but it's essential for fertilizer production, which means food security. And right now, Brazil imports a lot of its phosphate. The report says, hey, we have the potential to be more self-sufficient here.
Okay, I see where they're going with this. Less dependence on imports, more control over their own resources.
Exactly. And they suggest some pretty interesting approaches, like exploring untapped sedimentary basins and looking into magmatic deposits. They're not just saying, let's find more phosphate. They're saying, let's find it strategically and sustainably.
Smart. So how do they propose doing that?
Well, targeted geological surveys, for one. They even talk about revisiting areas that were explored in the past using, let's just say, less advanced methods.
Like, what did we miss the first time around? I like it. But it sounds like sustainability is a core part of this vision, not just an afterthought.
Absolutely. The report emphasizes considering environmental factors right from the start of any exploration project. They even suggest looking into alternatives to conventional fertilizers, ones that might be derived from specific rock types.
Okay, so that's thinking outside the box, but it sounds like this goes beyond just phosphate. It's really about a fundamental shift in how Brazil approaches resource management.
100%. The report is basically a call for Brazil to become a global leader in sustainable mining practices.
It's about recognizing that short-term gains aren't worth it if they come at the cost of the environment or future generations.
And that's where you come in. The report challenges Brazil to not just gather geological knowledge, but to actually use it.
To put that knowledge into action.
Exactly. It's about harnessing the power of geoscience to create a future where economic growth and environmental protection aren't at odds.
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly. And it's not just about mining and resource extraction either. This report really emphasizes using geoscience to understand and prepare for natural disasters as well.
Which makes a lot of sense for Brazil with its diverse landscapes and, well, the Amazon rainforest.
Right, they've got all landslides, floods, even earthquakes in some areas.
Yeah.
So the report talks about creating detailed hazard maps, developing early warning systems, really practical applications of geoscience.
It's like they're saying, let's use this knowledge to actually save lives, to protect people.
Exactly. And they even talk about incorporating this kind of geological knowledge into urban planning, making sure new developments are built in safer areas.
So it's about being proactive, not just reactive. Instead of picking up the pieces after a disaster, you're trying to prevent them in the first place, or at least minimize the damage.
Exactly. And this kind of forward-thinking approach applies to other challenges too, like water scarcity.
Which is a growing concern in many parts of the world, including Brazil.
Right. And with climate change, those droughts are becoming more frequent and severe in some regions. So the report stresses the importance of understanding groundwater resources.
So knowing where to find those underground water sources and how to manage them sustainably so they're there for future generations.
Exactly. You know, it's funny because when we talk about geology, People often think about these big dramatic things like volcanoes and earthquakes, but this report really highlights the everyday relevance of geoscience.
Absolutely. And it even gets into some really fascinating niche areas. Like they mentioned this thing called geomedicine, which I have to admit I'd never even heard of before reading this report.
Me neither. Sounds kind of sci-fi, doesn't it? But it's actually about understanding how geological factors can impact human health.
Okay, so what does that mean exactly?
Well, think about it. Certain types of rocks can release trace elements into the soil and water. Some of those elements, in high enough concentrations, can be harmful to humans.
So geomedicine is about understanding those links between geology and public health.
Right. And then using that knowledge to make sure people have access to safe drinking water, to identify potential health risks, that kind of thing.
Wow, so it really is all connected, our health, the environment, and the rocks beneath our feet.
It all ties together. And, this report isn't just a dry technical document. It's actually quite inspiring. It paints this picture of Brazil with so much potential, not just in terms of mineral wealth, but in terms of using geoscience to build a better future.
And that's the key message, isn't it? That this isn't just about gathering knowledge for the sake of it. It's about using that knowledge to make a real difference.
Absolutely. And they leave the reader with a call to action. They're urging everyone, not just scientists and policymakers, to learn more about geoscience and its potential.
To start asking questions, to advocate for change, to recognize that the future of Brazil, just like any country, is deeply intertwined with the ground beneath its feet. It's about recognizing that the earth beneath our feet is more than just rocks and dirt. It holds clues to our past, resources for our present, and the potential to shape a more sustainable future.
Well said. And on that note, I think we've just about scratched the surface of this fascinating report.
No pun intended. Right.
Of course not. But seriously, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
It really has. And to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep digging, check out the report for yourselves, learn more about the geology of where you live, and let's all do our part to make sure that knowledge translates into a brighter future. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.